Stop praying for healing. Start acting on what you already own. E.W. Kenyon. If you have ever knelt one more time asking for something you were told long ago already belongs to you, this one is for the private ache you don't say out loud, the one that gets tired of asking. There is a verse in the Psalms that Kenyon leaned on hard. Psalm 107 verse 20 says, "He sent His word, and healed them, and delivered them from their destructions." Notice the word sent sits in the past. The healing was already dispatched before you ever opened your mouth to plead for it. And Kenyon would stop you right there and say, "Do you see it?" The healing did not arrive the moment you finally prayed hard enough. It arrived the moment the word was sent. Your praying was never meant to summon it. Your praying was only ever meant to notice it had already come. And that means every night you spent begging for a delivery that already left the dock was a night spent misunderstanding your own mail. So before we go further, let's put something true in your mouth, something you can carry into today. Not someday, say it with me. I already carry what I've been begging for. I move today like it belongs to me because it does. I act on what I own. Again, I already carry what I've been begging for. I move today like it belongs to me because it does. I act on what I own. And if you want tomorrow's teaching to find you the same way this one just did, stay close. Subscribe so it reaches you. Now, if something in you just went quiet, if some old ache just sat up and listened, type the words "I'm ready" in the comments. Let it be your seal. The first key is ownership begins the moment you stop asking for what has already been deeded to you. Picture a man who inherits a farm from his father. The deed sits in a drawer with his name already written across it, and every morning he walks past the overgrown field and says, "Please let this field be mine someday." That man is not poor. He is only unaware, and unaware people live like beggars on property they already hold the title to. Kenyon taught that the finished work at the cross was exactly this kind of deed. Healing was included in the purchase, not added later as a bonus for good behavior or loud enough prayer. So when you kneel again tonight, asking for what the word already sent, you are not being humble. You are quietly disagreeing with the deed in the drawer. It is not a request you keep filing. It is a possession you keep forgetting you already hold. Think of the woman who has prayed for peace in her home for 11 years. The same plea every single night. Meanwhile, the authority to speak peace into that home was placed in her mouth the very day she believed. She has been asking permission for a key that was already hanging on her own belt. Now picture another scene. A young man sits in a waiting room filling out the same form he has filled out for years. Name, date, reason for visit, and under his breath he keeps whispering, "Please let me finally be well," not noticing that in his coat pocket, folded and forgotten, is a letter that already declared him healed long before he ever sat down in that chair. He is not lying when he says he wants healing. He simply has not opened his own pocket. This is the strange tragedy Kenyon kept pointing at, that so many sincere people spend their whole lives negotiating for a gift that was signed, sealed, and delivered long before the negotiation ever started. The drawer was never locked. The letter was never withheld. The only thing missing was someone willing to open it and read it as already true. This is not about pretending pain is not real. Pain is real. The field really is overgrown. The back really does ache. The waiting room really does smell like fear. But the ownership question comes first. Before the field gets worked, you have to know whose name is on the deed. Before the letter gets believed, you have to actually take it out of the pocket. So today, in one small, ordinary moment, stop phrasing your need as a request and start phrasing it as a fact you are stepping into. Say it plainly to yourself, "This already belongs to me," and then move like someone who owns something instead of someone still filling out the application. Notice how differently a man walks when he knows the farm is his, compared to how he walks when he is still hoping to inherit it someday. The steps are heavier with hope and lighter with knowing. That lightness is what ownership actually feels like, not certainty shouted loudly, just a quiet, settled way of moving through an ordinary day. I already hold the deed I keep asking for. The second key is, the ownership you carry only becomes useful the moment you act like it is already yours. There is a man who pays for a storage unit every single month. The lease is in his name, the key sits on his ring, and yet he keeps his most valuable things crammed in his garage, tripping over them every day because walking to the unit and turning the key feels like an extra step he never gets around to. That is what it looks like to own healing on paper and never walk toward it in practice. You can believe correctly, quote the verse correctly, even feel the peace of it in a quiet moment, and still leave the very thing you own sitting untouched because you never turned the key. It is not belief that activates ownership. It is the turning of the key that belief already gave you. Think about the difference between a woman who says, "I believe I am healed," and then still arranges her whole week around the sickness, and a woman who says the same words and then goes ahead and does the one thing the sickness had stopped her from doing. Maybe it is climbing the stairs instead of taking the elevator. Maybe it is standing through the whole church service instead of sitting the second half. Small, almost invisible. But that is the turning of the key. And here is the part that trips so many sincere people up. They mistake the paperwork for the possession. They think because the lease is signed, the boxes must already be unpacked. But a signed lease has never once unpacked a single box. Only a hand can do that. Only a body walking to the door and turning the key can do that. Picture a second man, same storage unit, same lease, same key on the same ring. Except every week, he actually drives over, he unlocks the door, he pulls out one thing he needs and puts it to use in his ordinary life, a tool for a repair, a chair for his porch, a box of old letters he finally reads. His unit slowly empties into his living, while the first man's unit just sits there gathering dust behind a door nobody opens. Both men own exactly the same thing, but only one of them is living out of what he owns. Kenyon taught that faith is not a mood you wait to feel, it is a step you actually take, and the step is what proves the key was real all along. So ask yourself honestly this week, where have I already been handed the key and simply never walked to the door? Is it the stairs you keep avoiding? Is it the full portion at the table you keep declining out of habit? Is it the honest sentence, "I am healed," that you keep swallowing back into "I am hoping"? Because the door does not open itself, and no amount of admiring the key from across the room, turning it over in your hand, polishing it, praying over it again, ever unlocks anything. Only the walking does that. Only the turning does that. I turn the key. I already carry. The third key is, your senses will always hand you a report, but the report is not the deed. Let's walk through an ordinary day so you can see exactly where this trips people up. 6 in the morning, you wake up, and the first thing your body does is send its report. Stiff shoulder, tired eyes, a dull ache that settled in overnight. 7 o'clock, you check your phone, maybe you even search the symptom, and now the report has a second witness agreeing with it. 8 o'clock, you sit at the table and decide, based purely on that report, that today is going to be a smaller day than yesterday. 9 o'clock, you cancel the walk you had planned. 10 o'clock, you tell a friend, "I'm just not doing well today." And notice, by 10 in the morning, you have made 4 decisions, all of them built entirely on a report from your senses. and not one of them consulted the word that was already sent on your behalf. This is exactly what Kenyon warned against. He called it sense knowledge, the information that comes through eyes, ears, and feeling, and he set it directly against revelation knowledge, the information that comes through what has already been declared true. Sense knowledge is not a liar exactly. The stiffness really is there. The ache really is felt. But sense knowledge only ever reports on today's weather. It cannot see the deed in the drawer. It was never given clearance to. Think of sense knowledge like a foggy window in an old house. The fog on the glass is real. You can wipe your finger across it and feel the wet chill, but the fog is not the house. The fog cannot tell you who owns the house, who holds the title, or what is stored safely in the rooms behind it. And yet so many people spend their whole morning studying the fog as if it were the deed itself, reading it, rereading it, describing it to everyone who will listen, when all it was ever qualified to tell them was the temperature of the glass. Kenyon would say the senses were never given a vote in what is legally true, only a report on what currently feels true, and those are two very different courts entirely. Now picture that same day running differently. 6 in the morning, the report comes in, stiff shoulder, tired eyes. 7 o'clock. Instead of searching the symptom, you speak the word that was already sent, quietly, plainly, not shouting it, not performing it for anyone, just saying it the way you'd confirm an address you already know by heart. 8 o'clock. You get up and do the ordinary next thing anyway. Not reckless, just ordinary. 9 o'clock. You take the walk you had planned. Shorter maybe, slower maybe, but you take it. 10 o'clock. You tell your friend something true about what you are choosing rather than something true about how you currently feel. That is the same body, the same stiff shoulder, the same morning report, and a completely different day built on top of it. It is not that the ache is denied. Denial was never the teaching. It is that the ache is no longer allowed to write the whole schedule. The ache gets to speak. It simply does not get to sign anything. And here is the part worth sitting with. This is not a one-time trick you perform on a hard morning. It is a pattern you will be offered again and again. Every single day will hand you a fresh report. Some days mild, some days loud, and every single day the same quiet choice sits underneath it. Will the report be treated as the verdict, or will it be treated as weather passing over a house whose deed was settled long before the weather arrived? I act on the word, not on the weather of my body. The fourth key is, every ordinary act you do, as if the healing is already true, becomes a receipt you hand back to heaven. Think of a delivery driver leaving a package on a porch. The package cannot make the homeowner come outside. Someone still has to walk out, pick it up, and sign the slip, acknowledging it arrived. The package was fully paid for and fully sent long before that signature. But the signature is what closes the transaction on the receiving end. Your small daily actions are that signature. And here is a story to make it plain. A woman named her own private ache after years of being cautious with her back. Every morning for a long time, she woke up and let the ache decide the whole shape of her day. She skipped the walk to the mailbox. She asked her husband to lift what she could have lifted herself. She sat out the second half of every gathering, and none of this was dramatic. It was just quiet, constant surrender dressed up as caution. Then one ordinary Tuesday, she decided to do one small thing differently. She carried her own grocery bag from the car, instead of waving her husband over. That is all. No trumpet sounded, no lightning struck. She simply carried the bag, and something in her straightened that day that had been bent for years. Not because the bag proved anything to her back, but because her hands finally signed for something her mouth had been claiming for months, tying your own shoes instead of asking for help, walking up one extra flight of stairs, carrying the bag you normally hand to someone else, eating a full, ordinary meal instead of the cautious portion fear has trained you into. None of these things are dramatic. None of them make a good story to tell at dinner. And that is exactly the point. Ownership is rarely proven in one loud leap. It is proven in a stack of small, unremarkable signatures. A courthouse never asks for fireworks. It only asks for a signature in the right place at the right time. Pause for a moment and pick one real, specific, small action you have been avoiding because some part of you is still waiting for more proof before you'll attempt it. Just one. Something you could do today without needing anyone's permission. And do it today, not as a test to see if the healing is real, but as a signature confirming that you already know it is. Notice, too, that the package never asks the homeowner to feel a certain way before signing. It only asks for the hand, so if your feelings have not caught up yet, that is not a disqualifier. The signing still counts. Kenyon taught that faith without this kind of corresponding action stays theoretical. A legal right can sit in a drawer forever if nobody ever signs for the delivery, and a porch can hold an unopened package for years while the owner keeps praying for it to arrive. I sign for what heaven already sent. The fifth key is the whole teaching finally comes together in one distinction. Kenyon returned to, again and again, the difference between a legal right and a vital reality. And it is worth walking through this slowly, because everything else has been building toward it. First, consider the legal right. When Kenyon spoke of the legal right, he meant something like a title deed sitting in a courthouse. It is officially, legally, permanently yours. The instant it is recorded, nothing else needs to happen for it to be true on paper. Your healing, in this sense, became your legal right the moment the finished work was finished. It did not wait for your prayer to make it legal. It was already legal. Whether you felt it, believed it, or even knew about it yet, a newborn heir owns the family estate the hour he is born, long before he understands what an estate even is. His ignorance never once changes the paperwork. Second, consider the vital reality. This is the part most people skip past too quickly. A vital reality is that same legal right now walking around, breathing, lived in, functioning in your actual Tuesday afternoon. A man can legally own a piano and never once feel the vital reality of music filling his house, because owning the piano and playing the piano are two entirely different experiences sitting on top of the exact same legal fact. He can dust it every week, insure it, brag about it to guests, and still never once hear it sing. Third, picture an orchard. A man inherits an old family orchard, along with the legal right to draw water from the shared canal that runs behind the property line. That water right is recorded, sealed, undisputed. No neighbor can take it from him. No court will ever question it. And yet the very first summer he owns it, he does nothing. The head gate sits closed. The canal runs full just beyond the fence. And the trees stand exactly as thirsty as if he owned nothing at all. From the road you cannot tell the difference between his orchard and an orchard with no water right whatsoever. The leaves curl the same. The fruit shrivels the same. The only difference is invisible. Sitting quietly in a filing cabinet in town, this is where so many sincere people quietly get stuck. They keep re-praying for the legal right as though it were still uncertain, checking the filing cabinet again and again when the actual gap the whole time was between the legal right, which was never in question, and the vital reality, which only ever comes through use. Fourth, consider how the gap actually closes. It does not close through more intense emotion. It does not close through repeating the prayer with greater volume or greater tears. It does not close through driving back to town to stare at the paperwork one more time. It closes through walking to the head gate and turning it, through the water actually leaving the canal and running down the rows between the trees. Each ordinary act of speaking the word instead of the report, of moving instead of waiting, is simply the legal right being walked into vital reality, one ordinary hour at a time. Picture the orchard owner finally out there one dry morning, hands on the old iron wheel, turning it against the rust of years, and the water groaning through the pipe, and then rushing, and the first row darkening with moisture within the hour. Nothing about his ownership changed that morning. He owned the water the whole time. Only the use did. And yet that morning is the first time the orchard ever actually became his in any way his trees could feel. Picture too a woman who inherits her grandmother's old sewing machine. It legally belongs to her the day the will is read, but it sits in the corner for 3 winters, untouched, gathering dust, until one evening she finally sits down, threads it herself, and mends a torn sleeve. The machine did not become more hers that evening. It only became used. 5th, consider the muscle that has gone quiet. Think of it like a muscle that was never actually damaged, but has gone unused so long it has forgotten how to fire. The strength was never gone. The wiring was never gone. But nobody would call that muscle vitally strong while it sits unused, no matter how legally intact the tissue remains. Use is what makes the difference vital rather than theoretical. And this is precisely why Kenyon refused to let people camp out forever in prayer alone. Prayer that only repeats a request is prayer that is still negotiating over something that was never actually in dispute. The dispute was settled. What remains is not negotiation. What remains is occupation, moving into the house you already legally own, hanging your own pictures on its walls, cooking your own meals in its kitchen, sleeping soundly under its roof, watering the rows you already have every right to water. 6th, consider how this plays out across an ordinary week rather than a single dramatic moment. Monday you speak the word instead of the report and take the walk anyway. Tuesday you forget and slide back into asking. Wednesday you catch yourself mid-request and turn it into a decree instead. Thursday the ache flares, and for an hour you sit in the old pattern, staring at the closed headgate, like the orchard man once did. Friday you rise again and turn the wheel one more time anyway. This is not failure. This is exactly what walking a legal right into vital reality actually looks like for almost everyone. It is not a straight line. It is a slow trail of footprints, some of them wandering, most of them eventually pointing the same direction. And once you see this, you cannot unsee it in the rest of your life either. The same gap exists in a marriage where 2 people are legally committed, yet rarely vitally close. The same gap exists in a job where someone legally holds a title, yet never vitally operates in the authority that title carries. The same gap exists in a friendship that is legally still intact on paper, while nobody has called in months. The same gap exists in an orchard owner's field. Every single summer he lets the head gate rust shut. The pattern is everywhere once you know to look for it, and every single time, the fix is never more proof of the legal side. The fix is simple, unglamorous use. So hear this plainly. Your legal right to healing is not fragile. It does not need to be reproven, re-earned, or re-argued. It is settled, fully, quietly, permanently settled. What needs attention is only the vital side, the walking, the speaking, the turning of the wheel, the small daily use of what the legal side has already guaranteed. My legal right becomes my daily reality when I move. The 6th key is, today is the only day you actually have to practice any of this in. Not tomorrow, not the day the report finally improves, not the day you finally feel worthy enough to stop begging. Today, and that is mercy, not pressure, because it means you are never required to prove a whole lifetime of ownership in one dramatic afternoon. You only ever have to act on what you own inside the 24 hours currently standing in front of you. Think of a woman who has kept a beautiful dress hanging in her closet for years, still tagged, still wrapped in plastic. She keeps telling herself she will wear it on the right day. The special day, the day she finally feels ready enough to deserve it. And every single morning she reaches past it for the same tired, faded thing she has worn 100 times before. Years pass this way. The dress never ages. It just waits. And one ordinary Tuesday, she finally takes it off the hanger. Not because anything outside her changed, not because the day suddenly became special, but because she got tired of waiting for a day that was never going to announce itself. That Tuesday becomes special only because she wore the dress in it. It is not that the day makes the wearing possible, it is that the wearing makes the day matter. And healing works the very same way. You have been waiting for the day your body finally agrees before you start living like the word is true. But the agreement was never the qualification. Today was if yesterday you spent the whole day negotiating with your senses instead of standing on the word. That is simply yesterday. It does not get a vote in how today goes. It does not get to reach forward and tax tomorrow for its unbelief. Kenyon's whole teaching was never meant to hand you shame for how long you misunderstood the deed. It was meant to hand you relief, real relief, because the deed never actually depended on your understanding it correctly. It was true while you were still confused about it. It stayed true through every night you begged instead of walked. And it stays true now that you are finally seeing it clearly. So let today be small. Let today be plain and ordinary and almost forgettable. One sentence spoken instead of one more complaint rehearsed. One small step taken instead of one more excuse examined. And let that be enough, because it actually is enough. A single ordinary day lived from ownership does more than a decade of dramatic pleading ever could. It is not the size of today's action that matters. It is simply that today's action finally matches what was already true. So take the dress off the hanger. Today's are not rehearsals for some better day still coming. Today's are the only stage you were ever given. And this one, right now, is yours to use. Today I stop begging and start living. Here is the whole picture. Ownership begins the moment you stop asking for what is already deeded to you. The key you were given only works once you turn it yourself. Your senses will always file a report, but the report was never given authority over the word. Your small daily actions are the signatures that close a transaction heaven already sent. Your legal right was never in question, only the vital walking out of it. And today, just today, is the only place any of that walking ever actually happens. And once you line all 6 of these up together, you realize they were never 6 separate teachings at all. They were 6 different angles on one single recognition. That you have spent far more energy asking heaven to do something it already did than you have spent simply living like it was done. That is the whole picture. That is the whole shift. Stop praying for the delivery. Start signing for it. Say it with me one last time. I already carry what I've been begging for. I move today like it belongs to me, because it does. I act on what I own. And if that landed somewhere quiet in you, let it stay there, because the field was never actually barren, the deed was never actually missing. You were only ever a few small, ordinary actions away from living in what you already legally, fully, and finally own.